And I remember he came home and I come upstairs and he's like, "Hey, is anyone else over?" And I was like, "No." He's like, "Was that you playing just now?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Oh, thank God." And I was like, "Why?" He goes, "Oh man, for the last like 3 weeks, you were terrible."
Welcome, everyone, to This Was The Scene, the podcast that takes a look back at the late 90s, early 2000 punk scene. I am your host, Mike Doyle. The Youth Ahead was a four-piece pop-punk band from Old Bridge, New Jersey. They started in 95, and they stayed extremely active until their breakup in 2005. That's all that is written on their Facebook page, and there's nothing else online, so I'm kind of winging it for this one. Some of the records they put out were the Wonder Years, spelled like the Oneaters in that movie, That Thing You Do, which I talk about with Jay. The new album, The Package EP, and For the Ones That Got Away. I connected with Jay months ago, and we had planned on doing an interview, and then for some reason I lost the message or wherever the fuck we were talking to each other. It was like Facebook or Instagram. We talked about this. And then a few weeks ago, I was having a beer over at Tasty Beverage Co. in Raleigh, North Carolina. And I get this call from Steve LWL, and he's like, "Hey man, I have Jay's information if you want to interview him." And I was like, "Yes, I do," because I was talking to him, and I have tried to set this up, but luckily Steve connected us, so thank you for that, Steve. And I got to schedule a call with Jay, and I was like, "Hey dude, let's do this shit." He's like, "Let's fucking go." Got on a call, and this is what we talked about. Our dads not believing in our musical endeavors, the Cheesequake Firehouse shows, John D. from Bamboozle, not knowing who's running their current website, a possible mix-up for not getting on certain labels, wanting Steve LWL to join the band, why remembering that time period is important, and a ton more. Make sure you check out his record label, Panic State Records. I have a link in the show notes, or you can just go to panicstaterecords.com and go there and buy a bunch of stuff from them. Also, make sure you check out thiswasthescene.com. I've got some merch up there that helps support the podcast. If you want to make a donation, there's also a button that does that. If you want to become a Patreon, where it's $1 a month, you can do that as well. All of this is at thiswasthescene.com. And I'd also like to thank all the people who have recently donated. It's been really helpful and super awesome, so thank you so much. And I'd also like to thank all the people who tagged friends on the Instagram account. And they've got free buttons. It was just for about 15 buttons I had that I was a limited offer. If you happen to know anyone who you think should listen to this podcast, you can do a couple things. You can go to the Instagram account and you can just tag them on any episode you think they would like. Or you could just use the share button from the app you're listening to and just share it and just text it to them and say, "Hey, person, I think you should listen to this because it's about the late 90s punk scene and it's awesome." So yeah, do that. If you want to sponsor the podcast, you can just email me at thiswasthescene@gmail.com. Either you could be in the intro, or you could also be part of the teaser that I launch twice a week before an episode, or you can also get some space on the website. So that's all I got to say about that. Feel free to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with anyone who would love some punk rock nostalgia. With that said, let's get started. All right, now I'm recording. You better be fucking ready and excited.
I really am, man. I really am. A little nervous, but I'm super stoked.
I don't get why people get nervous with this. I've had so many people say that. They're like, "Oh, I don't know what we're going to talk about." And then 2 hours goes by. They're like, do we have more time to talk? I'm like, no.
You know what it is? I know everyone says that, and I feel the same way. It's almost like, I don't know, you start to think like, does anyone care? Does anyone want to hear this?
Yeah.
And then when I listen to the podcast and I'm like, oh, I do care and I do want to listen to this. So it's, I don't know, it's just one of those things. It's like, I don't know, it's kind of weird, but it definitely, it brings back a ton of good memories and everything, so.
I just think that people, I think, what am I going to say? I think the reason it's interesting is because it's so specific and the audience listening gives a fuck about that time, and there's so many
absolutely
stories.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's why it's so fun, actually. What was I gonna say? No, totally lost. Where the fuck were we talking? And then I totally lost that message. It was on Facebook. For months I was going back looking through Instagram.
It was through Josh. I don't know if you hit up Josh or...
No, but we talked, though. You and I had a conversation going online somewhere, didn't we?
Yeah, but it was Josh set it up between you, me, and Sean, I think, on Facebook. Josh Josh was in Youth Ahead, then was in Catch 22 and Streetlight for a while.
Oh, yeah, because I couldn't find the message anywhere. I was
It
looking
might
through
have been, yeah,
everywhere.
it might have been through him, and because I know we did talk a little bit, and then I ran into Steve LWL, and we were bullshitting, and he was like, "Dude, you got to do the podcast," and I said the same thing. I'm like, does anyone want to hear it? Like, I don't know, and then it's like, but like you said, when you hear all these stories, it's like, man, it just totally brings you right back to that time.
Yeah, and it's funny because Steve told me like he reached back out to me like you said, and he was like, "Hey man, I talked to Jay," and he's like, "You guys should talk." And I was like, "Oh yeah, I've been trying to get in touch with him again." And then he was like telling me about like some stuff that you guys had gone through, like some
Well,
shit.
he remembers everything. That kid is like fucking incredible.
I know.
He he it's dude, it's I'm like talking to him like, oh man, that's right, that did happen. And then we're just BSing, and I was like, dude, we got to catch up sometime because he really does. He remembers everything.
Well, I love too because Steve, no one calls anybody anymore ever. And he called me out of the blue a couple weeks ago. That's where we connected. And it's funny just because typically people just text somebody. Like I'd say 99.999% of the time people text me, and he just like calls, and it's
He's
just
so funny,
it's
man.
amazing. But he's like it's nice to catch up too because that's what I love about this because like I think even in his interview, I talked to him because he just called me out of the blue prior to his and was like, "I fucking love this," and I was like, "You need to be
Dude,
on this."
it's awesome, man. I honestly like not kissing your ass about the whole podcast thing, but it's like I think it totally takes me back. And for a long time, I just kind of like, I don't, I guess like every old punk rock kid, I was so like, I just, oh, the scene turned its back on me and the whole thing. And I don't know, man, it just totally, like, dude, I go to shows again now just from, that's where I ran into Steve at the Humble Beginnings in Jersey City reunion show. And it's just, I don't know, it just brings me back in a very, definitely good.
Yeah, I
Definitely
think
very, very good.
I feel like I've seen a lot on Facebook people playing shows or I don't know, like I think like even with Steve, like Jettison went back in the studio and recorded some stuff, and then
Yeah.
Nina was posting a lot of stuff about Avery when
Oh,
they
it was
played the
awesome seeing
show.
Avery play. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah,
And that's, and I started kind of going back to more shows, but it's like listening and everything. And it's like, I don't know, it pulls you back. It reminds you, like, oh man, we used to have fun.
when you start going to shows now though, like how does it feel? Because the only show that I went to was the one we played last year with Humble, and that felt it was it felt the same, but like on a different level. Like
Yeah, it's weird. I think just going to shows, I enjoyed myself. I had a good time. But when we did, Youth Ahead did a reunion a few years back, and it was very odd. It was kind of weird. Like, I don't know, it was just, and it just didn't feel 100% right because a lot of
yeah,
stuff kind of happened. But then we played like 3 years ago. We played Starland with like Catch, and it was unbelievable.
jeez.
We felt great. It was the best thing. And then so now it's like why play again? The last time we played, it was just perfect.
That's yeah. I've talked about this so many times because Jeremy always hits me up from Humble. He's like, "Come on, man, play again, play again." I'm like, dude, I I don't want to erase. I don't want to have the next show not be
Yeah,
as great as the show that we played in Mexicali. Like that was the most perfect
yeah.
thing.
That's what we kind of felt. I mean, you know what? I would still probably do it again because obviously it's fun catching up with everybody and so on and so on. But it was nice kind of ending on it just felt right.
Well, that's a good because did you guys? I mean, we'll obviously get into this, but was there like a tumultuous ending?
No, I mean it was weird. I guess just like any band, I mean just something weird happens, and yeah, I guess not even weird. It's just I don't know. Like we all kind of just went in our own directions. I guess at that point.
Okay, well, we'll get into that.
Yeah,
I'll build into it so you're like, all right, now
yeah,
here's
yeah,
all the details of what happened. I'm like, there we go. Open up and
yeah.
share,
This
Jay.
this isn't going to end with me crying at the end of it, is it?
I don't
Like,
think anyone's done that. Actually, no, there was one. Barker almost he got choked up at the very end of his because I flipped it on him. And usually I have everybody will say like, their scene ethics and stuff. And I flipped
Yeah.
it on him. I was like, "Hey man, I just want to like say thanks for all this stuff," and I just ended it like just genuinely because he's like been my best friend since I was like 14, and you could just hear him get choked up, and I like
Yeah.
end it right at the end, and as soon as I hit stop, he's like, "Dude, what the fuck?"
Why'd you do that?
It's like, why am I crying? What are these things coming out of my
Yeah, no,
eyes?
listen, man, it's definitely, we all, I hate, again, not to sound corny, but I kind of feel we all shared something special.
Yeah, I was thinking about it the other day because I'll say this a couple times because I live in North Carolina, and if I lived in New Jersey, even the other day, because I'm trying to think of things to put on the YouTube channel that's not just podcast episodes because no one wants to sit there and look at an image and listen to, I don't know, for me, I wouldn't do that. Just like listen for an hour to 2 hours of people talking with staring at an image. And so I'm trying to think of cool things to put on the channel to make it more interesting. And it's weird because like the talking to people is perfect, but building off of that, I don't really know what to do. But I thought if I was in Jersey, I would probably roll up to because I know like video production. I'd probably roll up to like the West Orange like Legion Hall and just plant my camera and just talk with it in the background and tell
Oh,
stories
yeah.
and like go show up at people's houses and obviously let them know but and then
Surprise.
and like talk to them and get like just little tiny clips and stuff and make it more interesting and expand on it. But I'm about a 9 hour drive from doing that, and I don't think I'll be doing that anytime soon. But I
Hey,
yeah
on a
yeah
side note, I want to stop this because I forgot to ask you prior.
yeah.
How's your dog doing? Because I know a while back that's when I reached out to you about your dog. You
Oh
posted your
yeah.
dog wasn't feeling well.
Yeah, he's having seizures, and it's funny that you asked that today. Well, it's not funny because it's the first time we're talking about it.
No, I know.
It's good. It's interesting timing because I just took him to the neurologist today, and I'm gonna get him started on potassium bromide, which is
Okay.
yeah, it helps the seizures. And like I guess the meds that I had him on, it's usually the second phase. So the ones I have him on now it can fuck up their liver and it's pretty intense shit. But if
Yeah.
he's like 2.5, so I'm hoping that because it's really stressful. Like
Oh, of course, of
yeah.
course. It happened to my friend's dog, kind of the same thing. That's what I was telling you.
Oh yeah.
With him, it was like a bone or whatever they were giving him, and it was like triggering everything. But as long as he's
Yeah.
hopefully he's doing all right, and not to kill the whole podcast vibe, but
No, no, no. Actually, it's funny because the episode before yours, I'm talking to Jay from Red Rover, and he had asked me that too at like the same
oh,
time.
gotcha.
Yeah, so this will be 2 episodes in a row talking about my shaky dog.
Yeah, we're worried about him. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely it's I won't like stay with it, but it's super stressful because you're like, when's it gonna happen? And like technically it probably mathematically should happen tonight, another one, or tomorrow, but I'm gonna start on the
Mathematically, oh man,
yeah,
you're planning it.
yeah, it's like you have to keep it. So anyone's listening,
No,
that,
I know, I
side
know.
note, but it's like if anyone has a dog with seizures, like you have to track the date, the time, how long it lasts, what happens, and have this whole record of stuff because it helps the vet really know. So if anyone actually is dealing with that, it's also very stressful and no one really gets it, but it's yeah,
Yeah, no, I can imagine. I can
yeah.
imagine.
I was trying to think of like how to start maybe like a nonprofit for people with dogs with seizures, but I just have no idea what the fuck the money would go to. It's like here's for beer to de-stress because it sucks balls. But anyway, yeah. So everyone listening, obviously, but that from the title, this is Jay. He was the drummer in the Youth Ahead. You guys started in '95, and we're gonna lead up to that. There's, if you have any cool stories that you want to tell, because especially there's a bunch of videos of you guys playing, and you guys had some big fucking crowds too that you guys played in front of.
Yeah, it was awesome. I mean, it was
Yeah.
definitely, again, listening to the podcast really takes me back to like all that. And I've been, looking at old flyers and watching, old videos and stuff. And it's awesome. There's really nothing to say about it. It totally brings me back to that time. And I hit up Sean actually yesterday and I was like, dude, I'm trying to remember like certain bands we played with, especially at like Cheesequake, Firehouse and everything. And I'm like, oh man, I'm going to sound so lame because I can't remember half the shit. Like,
Well, you can't.
but
You're not.
you know,
There's no way you're gonna know anything before a question's asked. You could sit there
well,
and
that's
try to
what it is.
prep.
I tried doing my homework.
Yeah, everyone
So
does. Everyone's like, "Oh, I was researching." Like, what the fuck are you researing? Like,
yeah, who knows? Well, I
it's
just
gonna be
texted
triggered to
him.
questioning. Yeah. But all right, so I'm gonna take it back and structure this like every episode, and this will be 70, like I said, 72, I
Yeah, my
think.
lucky number.
Yeah, so it's the same structure. Everyone listening, it's repetitive, but it works because it helps people understand, like, you connect with how you listen to songs, and then people remember like how they listen to songs. And it's funny too, because before we jump into it, so Chrissy from Element 101, I just interviewed her, and then hers is going to launch on Friday.
I love Element 101.
Yeah, and it's a really it's a really good interview, and she's great. And when I asked her what got her into music, her answer, I was like, I'm always expecting it's just something that's typical for everyone, but there's
Yeah.
been so many people where it's so different. I'm like, wow, I never thought that was a thing. Or she talked.
Nice, nice.
Yeah, so her answer was pretty cool. But yeah, I'm always intrigued to start this off. So we'll go back to what musical thing you saw or heard that got you into it, and then we'll progress into how that led into finding the scene, how it led into the band, talk about the band, talk about any really fucked up shit along the way. But yeah, man, take me back to Little J, and what
Little J.
good old Little J. What music were you were like, fuck yeah.
Honestly, man, my first concert was Primus in the city,
Mm.
and it was cool.
Wow.
I was like 14, and I was like, this is definitely, it's definitely cool. I had a good time. A week after that, I saw No Effects at Stone Pony, and that just blew my mind away. I had no idea what happened. It was like skydiving. You jump out of a plane, and like it was intense, and I fell in love.
Okay, so leading up to that though, how did you get? What led you go into the Primus show?
What led me to Primus was a few of my buddies in high school. Jay and Ben were super huge Primus fans, and I think my buddy Don, Sean in the Youth Ahead, I believe, was with us. So they all had tickets and wanted, like, oh, you should go. So we went, and I think it was there that Sean was talking about No Effect. Sean was like 2 years older than me, and he kind of was the one that kind of got me into it a little bit. And so I think it was from, oh, dude, if you love this, you totally have to go with us to the Pony. Me and Sean lived in the same neighborhood as well, so we grew up together. And
Which neighborhood was this?
Central Park in Old Bridge.
Okay.
And I think from there it was just, when we went to No Effects, I think that was like the gateway where it just opened up, and it was like, I need more. I need to know everything. And I guess everyone has that one friend in high school, like that, either, it was a classmate or whatever. But for me, it was Jill Parnicki. And she made me a mixtape, had like Hagfish on it and Propaganda and Sloppy Seconds. And it was insane. I went home and I was like, hey, I want to play drums. And my dad's like, yeah, that's not going to happen. Cause I think like a year before that, I wanted to play guitar. And, so it was like, he bought me a guitar and I never played it once. And, it was like, no, I have to play drums. Like, I just kind of fell in love. And one day, me and Sean, we're at a pizza place on the top of the development. He was like, dude, let's start a band. I'm going to play guitar and sing, which I don't even know if he had a guitar at that point. And I didn't have drums yet. So we just started this pretend band, I guess. And it was crazy. Yeah, it was right before Christmas. I remember my father telling me, dude, there's no way, like, you're not getting drums. My mother went out Christmas Eve behind his back and bought my first drum set.
It's kind of like the story it's like a Christmas story where it's the dad. I never caught that until not too long ago, where the dad bought the gun for the kid. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, he kind of, if no one's ever seen that movie before.
Sorry, everyone. But yeah, it's the one parent's listening in the background, and you're going to the other one thinking like you're gonna understand, and they're just giving you static, and the one behind the scenes like, oh, okay, I can see that.
And listen, in his defense, I get it. Like, he did buy me a new guitar. I didn't touch it. Like, I'm sure a week before I wanted to do something else. You know what I mean? So it's like, but no, my mother totally went behind his back, bought me drums, and that I've been playing ever since.
Well, it's funny too, because I can relate to that story. My buddy Bob, who I've mentioned many times in this podcast, when I met Barker I'm not going to hijack the story here, but I just want to relate to it. When I met Chris, who was in Lanemeyer, he already had been playing guitar for years, had lessons, and he was like writing lyrics and poetry and all this shit. And
Yeah.
I saw that, and I was like, oh, I want to do that stuff. So I remember talking to my dad around my birthday and said, hey, my buddy Bob, he had bought a bass and he just put it down. He never really used it. And I asked him, I was like, hey, I want to buy that. And I think he sold it to me for like $150. And I told my dad, I was like, I can get this bass. I really want to play. And he did the same thing. He's like, I don't know. Are you really going to do this? I was like, no, I really am going to do this. He's like, I guess. And like literally the day I got it, I never put that fucking thing down. I'd come home from
No.
school. I would always played in front of, I mean, this must have been more difficult with the drum set, but I used to always be in my sister's room because she had cable and she had a phone and mine was the room next door. I had none of that shit. But she had a
Yeah.
mirror like on her van or bureau or whatever, and I would stand in front of it and play bass with like not even knowing how to play, and I'd kind of learn tablature and sit there and just pretend like I was in a band. Then
Oh, did the same thing with sticks and stuff. Like, yeah, the whole
did you
thing.
did you do that like where you were sitting with sticks and like no drum set?
Yeah, I was a nerd.
It's amazing.
I think I still do it sometimes. Like if I'm like walking by a mirror and I'm like, I don't know, I don't know guitar, so I just I'll do little air drums every once in a while.
Just stop and play air drums
Yeah,
in the bathroom in the morning.
but no, as a kid, yeah, I was like obsessed. Like and it's funny, kind of touch on what you were saying. Like you just were obsessed with it. I remember my father coming home one day, I guess like a month after I got my drums, and I remember he came home and I come upstairs and he's like, "Hey, is anyone else over?" And I was like, "No." He's like, "Was that you playing just now?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Oh, thank God." And I was like, "Why?" He goes, "Oh man, for the last like 3 weeks, you were terrible." And something just like clicked. And it was such a terrible thing, I guess, to say, but I know where he's coming from. When he's like, "No," he's like, "Keep it up." And I think it was there where he was like, "All right, I get it now."
So it took you 3 weeks to actually kind of find a little bit of a groove.
Well, I'm sure it was still terrible, but I mean, it's yeah, I was terrible for a while, but
Well, drums aren't
yeah,
easy, man.
I think I finally started like I guess I could play without stopping every 40 seconds.
Yeah, just the coordination for drums. I mean, I remember Josh from Humble. He would always sit there and play like on his knees or something. We'd be sitting there talking, and he would be doing like the padiddle or what not
Oh
padiddle,
yeah,
like
wipe out.
no, it was like the double, like whatever the fuck.
Yeah,
He played drums with
paradiddles.
yeah, paradiddles. Thank you, and the padiddle, the fucking one headlight car. But I remember he would do that, and he'd say he would do it on a drive. So even now to this day, when I'm driving, and I've never played drums, I've gotten behind a set like maybe once before practice for like 2 seconds. I was like, yeah, I suck at this. But just even as I'm driving, like my left foot, because obviously I drive with my right foot for braking gas, but my left foot is
Yeah,
actually pretty good with like playing like a kick drum to the music I'm listening to. But
nice.
that's how I would like practice for the years, for practice for nothing, because I never fucking did anything with it. But it's so hard. Like drumming is like Jesus Christ, and it's so fucking loud.
Well, well, it's funny because I noticed I'm trying to be very aware of it. Normally, I'm like, I can't hear shit, so I'm always like, what? So I'm
Oh
trying to
yeah.
I'm like, all right, just listen to what he's saying, So yeah, that's obviously the main reason why my hearing's on the fritz. But
Shit, yeah, it just like screams when you're at a show now and you have to have the earplugs in, and everyone's like,
yeah, I mean, listen,
dork.
the,
You're
the
like,
louder the better. But yeah, now it's like it's definitely catching up to me.
oh yeah, it's fucking apparent. When okay, leading up to this though, you went to go see NoFX. There's a video I've seen where they're playing CBGBs and they open up with linoleum, and this is like Fat Mike before he's like super. Obviously, this is 20 years
Yeah,
ago,
going
but
back, yeah.
but I mean nowadays he is a fucking mess. I mean he just looks like a disaster.
I agree, but I mean, I still love No Effects. But yeah, he's definitely a character.
Yeah, the book. If you have the chance to listen to
Oh,
it, listen
it's
to anyone.
amazing.
Yeah, everyone has to listen to it because they read it. But there's a video of them playing back in CBG was in like I don't know, it's like 96, 97. They open with linoleum, and that's where I remember hearing from Brian Granick. I don't know if you ever met him. He used to run. He used to help Stein with Umbilical.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and he played bass in Five Driver for like a hot minute. It was like bass or guitar, and he would tell me about NoFX. He's like, yeah, they used to be. I've never seen them live, but he was like they went crazy live, and so many bands emulated that, and so you got to see that firsthand back
Oh
then.
yeah,
So that was the first show you saw where you're like, fuck yeah.
Oh, it was insane. It was from that to like, at that time, I mean, everyone was playing the Pony. I mean, I grew up in Old Bridge, so Asbury was only like, 25 minutes, half an hour away. So, I mean, watching like the Descendants and everything. I mean, I remember one week I had pneumonia and it was like super bad. And I was at the doctor's and he was like, you have to stay home for a few days. And I had Boss Tone tickets. And then like 2 days later, I had Descendants tickets. And he was like, you there's no way you can go. And I was like, listen, man, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to both anyway. So what can we do so I don't die? And I forget what it was. I think like I promised him I would only go to one, but I definitely went to both. And I just sat in the corner. I was like, all right, I'm not going to go nuts. But to me then, I don't know. It was like, yeah, I guess the best way to explain it's like a drug. I had to see it all.
Did you find that when I'm sure you're not going to be able to remember 100%, but do you remember any inkling when you were sitting there in the corner wanting to die? Like when the bands went on stage, you just felt a bit of relief in that moment that you had and then when you're infecting everyone around you with your pneumonia.
Now just thinking about pneumonia gives me anxiety. I'm like, oh my God, I wouldn't be able to do anything for like a week. Then I just wanted to go and like, to this day, I'm a diehard Boss Tones and Descendants fan. I just think I felt like I couldn't miss it.
What was like about those bands that you liked? Was the energy on stage or was it something in the sound that you just loved?
Probably both, but I remember Dickie Barrett from the Boss Tones, obviously that rough voice.
Yeah.
And I remember at that show, which is crazy, like the certain little patches you remember, but I remember him saying, I sound like I've eaten like 4 bottles of glass, but nobody can sing a fucking Boss Tones song like me. and he's right. Like, who's going to sing a Boss Tones song better than Dickie? And I think that's where it just like all clicked, where it's like, and obviously in that, with all these shows, I've seen the Souls there a ton of times, the Bouncing Souls, and that I'm a diehard Souls fan. And it was just being, I guess, so close to that area too. It was just, I need more and more and more of it.
Did you at this time, so you go to Primus, you go see NoFX, you start going to the Pony, you and Sean are going, hey, we're going to start a band. So then you guys basically start playing with air instruments.
Yeah, pretty much.
You get the real instruments. So had you been to a local scene at any point during this? Or a local show during this?
No, I think... All right, so as all this is happening, we're obviously talking about starting a band. And our high school was doing, I guess like every high school, they do like the winter fall, like I guess like dance or music, whatever they call it. Like I think we called it like the winter jam or something.
Was it though? Was it actual dance or was it a performance where?
No, this was like a talent show, I guess.
Oh yeah, like a coffee house. I think that's what we used to call it.
And they did a few of our bands, and that's how I became friends with Josh, which was our first bass player. Josh was in a band that they played, and that was the thing where like, dude, we have to get together and play this. And we were terrible. And it was like, we don't care. We have to play this. And we played it. And Josh's band was like super good. Josh is one of the best bass players I've ever heard play. I mean, he's just unbelievable. And at that show, he was like, dude, I get what you guys are trying to do. Like, I see you're having fun. I want to have fun too with you guys. Let me be in your band. So we're just like, oh my God, this is insane. So it was all around this same time where I guess we started playing. We did the whole high school thing, and like that was the first time we ever played. And it was just like, now that we know that this is going on and we're a part of it, all we want to do is be a part of it.
Yeah, a lot of bands, I remember they would start at high school because that was the easy route because there was a guaranteed, not like you're going to get on it, but there was a guaranteed show, and that's all you knew is, oh, there's an audience, it's in the auditorium or the cafeteria or the stage,
yeah,
and you get to get up there and play. And then something leads you to, oh, hold on, there's these Legion Hall shows going on where people are playing the songs that we like, but they're writing their own shit. And somehow you find out about that through like a flyer at the mall that some kids handed out, or the random independent record store you finally found, or something in fucking Hot Topic. Like, what connected
absolutely.
that dots for you guys?
I think from there, Club Benet was doing a ton of shows in Sayreville at that point,
Benet.
like local shows.
Yep.
Like they did their big shows, but their big shows were really like '80s hair metal at that point. Like, but they had their like I guess local Sunday matinee, and I think that's what got us into. It was all right. They were starting. When I say they, I guess all the other bands in high school were playing Club and A, and we would go there, and then from there you'd see more flyers. But I think from there you'd see like basement shows was a big thing. Obviously,
Yeah.
being from Old Bridge, New Brunswick would always do basement shows, and going to a few of them, and it's like, oh my god, and it's crazy how it happens because it's just like a tornado.
Do you remember your first actual basement show or local show that you went to?
It was funny. I was trying to think, and I remember there was a band back in the day, and I'm going to butcher the name. They were like Assorted Kitchen Utensils. They were like a local band. They were phenomenal. But
Okay.
I remember like at Club and A, they had flyers, and they were playing like they called it a show, but it was in their friend's basement. So we didn't know. So a bunch of us went, and now we're sitting in this like person's basement, which was super weird for us because we've never done that before. We're in like a stranger's house in their basement, and it was unbelievable. And that I'm pretty sure that was like my first experience as like a basement kind of show, like a local basement show. And it was like, all right, we can do this. I think it was probably that. But as far as local shows, I think it all kind of stemmed from Club and A, and then just kind of certain hall shows. And then it was like, that's when I think we started doing the Cheesequake Firehouse shows because that was like the closest thing in our area. My father was a fireman, so it kind of just all worked out.
Wait, what's the Cheesequake Firehouse shows?
The Cheesequake, we did all, I was going to say, I don't know. I was trying to think if Laymeyer played. I used to run all the Cheesequake Firehouse shows, which was in Old Bridge. We had, I know who mentioned it. I think it was Chris Gethard that mentioned like the Cheesequake shows. And,
Fucking some kid.
yeah, that guy.
That's
Yeah, dude,
amazing.
that episode was
That's
hysterical.
incredible. Yeah, sorry, go on.
But we did all the Cheesequake Firehouse shows. I know Humble played. I don't know if
Oh, I'm
Laymeyer did.
sure humble. Man, I couldn't even tell you. I can visualize some of the shows we played. I don't know what it is. Like I can picture s- like certain venues where what it looked like from the outside, what it looked like from when we were loading, when we were like staring at the crowd, or there'd be a random
Yeah,
chandelier above that didn't make any sense, or a mirror behind, or like I can picture these things. I have no fucking clue of where they are. The only ones I actually will remember 100% is uh, Wayne Firehouse shows, West Orange, Allendale, Garfield, just because we had like a reunion. We were gonna break up and we stayed together after that. But after that, man, I mean, I couldn't even fucking tell you what
yeah. I
these
only
venues
remember
were.
certain is like Wayne Firehouse as well, and like I remember like the Boot and Elks Lodge,
Boone,
because I
yeah,
remember there being all like heads on the wall and stuff. But
yeah,
yeah,
and
we
Anvil,
we
yeah.
started doing Cheesequake Firehouse in Old Bridge. We started doing shows there, and we kind of worked out a deal with my father. We're like, listen, let's do shows. We donated all the money to the firehouse. We paid every
Oh wow.
band, and it was like, all right, after we pay the bands, you guys get the PA, and we just donate all the money to the firehouse. And I mean, at one point, we were doing like Weston and homegrown played, and
Oh
we
wow.
actually, yeah, it was Shades Apart a few times, and it was funny. I guess to backtrack a little, I remember sitting down with Sean, and we made this list, and it was, what do we want to do in music? And it was like play with Weston, play with Less Than Jake, and stuff like that. And that was like for us, like play with Shades Apart. I mean, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Like we got to play with Shades Apart at a hall show that we did. It was like the greatest thing ever. It was cool because it was kind of like we got to do all these all ages shows. We kind of got to help the firehouse, and obviously we got to meet a ton of bands. Who was it? Neil was just on the podcast
Yeah.
from Stick Figure, and we did kind of the same thing he was saying. We started doing shows so we can get on some bills and kind of meet everybody, and I hate to use the word like introduce ourselves, but
That's
it's the way
smart.
to do it.
It's funny that real quick you mentioned Shades Apart. I remember there was one song. I think it was Tainted Love was the song that was popular on one of the beer cinema things,
Yeah,
and
it was Tainted Love.
Yeah, but they had another song I thought that was popular that was on that first CD that was like a brown cover with red. I don't know why I can't remember like 100% of this thing, but I remember we played in Rockaway with them and there was like 10 people there. It was them and like Threadline. Threadline was this band. And it was just like I remember being so like, wait a minute, this is like shades apart. Like where the fuck is everybody?
Yeah, you know what? It's crazy because like they got huge when they put out that record on Universal, but before that, I think it was like a weird period for them. For one of my favorite bands.
But it was like it was a good lesson though because I think there was a lot of things that people I don't know, I think bands they just had this visions of grandeur where if you saw a band or the band had a CD or if you had seen them play with a bigger band in Irving Plaza or the City or Stone Pony or if you saw like a video you're thinking, "Oh my God, this is
Oh
where
yeah,
it's
or you see them on
huge."
like a comp or something, and you're just
Oh,
like,
yeah, on a comp. Yeah,
yeah,
100%.
absolutely, no,
And
absolutely.
yeah, and then like then you play a show and you're like, wait, I thought they made it, and then they're still struggling. You're like, fuck.
Yeah, dude, I love that band, man. I mean, I really do, and it's crazy. Like when we were doing hall, that was the whole point of like, oh, we do hall shows and to do like Shades Apart and like Doc Hopper and like all these bands. It was just insane for us to be a part of that. And like I don't even know how many kids were at the show. And again, I think it was like a kind of weird transitioning for a lot of those bands. A lot of younger bands coming up, and but yeah, and just doing that was like we just couldn't get over that feeling that we were playing at a show that we did. Like we're playing with these guys, and it was just unbelievable.
How did you guys, or who got the idea to go? Who at that moment was like going, wait a minute, we could put a show on ourselves? Was that something that you just thought of, or you heard that someone else did that, and you said, oh, wait a minute, that seems like a good fucking idea?
Yeah, you know what? I'm sure we went to a show or something. I mean, or going to a lot of the pony shows. The pony also did. It was kind of the same thing. I guess it was connected with Club and A, where they did like Sunday matinees and stuff like
That was
that.
like the pay to play ones that they did.
Yeah, I guess you had to like sell tickets or whatever it was,
I
and
fucking
I I
hated that shit.
I I think from there that's when we saw like a lot of flyers and shit. So I'm sure it was something like that, like firehouse shows or whatever. And I don't know. My father was like, I guess, even though he busted my balls when I first wanted drums, but he was super supportive, like with helping the band. And it just kind of like worked out. And you mentioned Element 101, like they played the Firehouse, and it was all these bands we kind of looked up to too. And it definitely without that. And again, I know Neil touched base on it, but for any younger bands, I guess listening, or this was huge for us because it was like we're doing these shows and now other bands want to play, so we kind of get in with them, and it's like a networking. And obviously,
Mm,
we didn't have
yeah.
online and all this stuff like we do now, so it
It
was very
still works.
difficult.
No, it still works though, because even as like a business for myself, what I realize if I go to a networking event, and this parallels obviously, but if I go to a networking event that someone else throws, I show up and I have to like go talk to people and mingle and shit to grow in business or get people to know who the fuck I am. If I throw the event, then everyone walking in, I feel like it's like having a house party. I can walk up to every and any person I want to and say like, hey, this is my event, or just like get to know them on a personal level because you're like, hey, thanks for coming to this thing, and you can talk to them casually and make like an actual
No,
like a
absolutely.
friendship with them. And that's smart though that we didn't realize that it's like we got it, but from a
Yeah, we didn't. We
we got it, but
understood
we
it, but
didn't
we
get
didn't
it.
understand
Yeah, it
it.
was just like, what's gonna make it easy for me to talk to these bigger bands? Oh, I know. If I do this show and bring them here, because then at the end of the day, it's like I'm the one who's gonna pay them. I'm the one who's they're gonna come and they're gonna talk to me directly for all this stuff. You're creating a bridge directly to you to talk to these bands, and if you do a good job, they're gonna remember that and say, hey man, like that was good. And then hopefully they're like your band, or they stay inside to even fucking watch your band, because that was also a
Yeah.
gamble, because they were probably
No, of
so
course,
over
of
it.
course. And
Yeah.
that's it's I think the one thing about the hall shows, they were all ages. And I think I could be wrong, but I think that was a big thing with us back then too. It was like, all right, a lot of these shows are say so far and it's like 18 and older, whatever it is. So it's like if we did a hall show, it can be all ages. And the fact that it was at the firehouse, I guess parents felt safe to send their kids there.
Did you guys find no? How did you position yourself in the lineup when you were doing the shows?
Always headline. No, I'm just kidding. No,
So Les and Jake, thanks for playing, guys. Everyone give it up for them. Where'd everybody go?
no, it was when you're saying now when we were doing the shows, kind of
Yeah,
where
like
did
how
we
did
put
you guys?
ourselves?
Yeah, how'd you have a discussion with the band? Say, all right, like this is our show. However, we realize that this is where we should plug into in the lineup.
Yeah, you know what? I think at that point, like, I mean, obviously we're just starting. We had no idea what we were doing. So if a band was doing it longer, now obviously, we would put them on a better slot. But I mean, I think at that point, I just think we were so happy to play. I mean, I'm sure that changed when we were playing more. I'm like, oh, we want to go on this time or like any band. But I think at
Yeah.
that point, we would have played before the doors opened. We were just so stoked just to even like set up.
I think a lot of people in bands that had that conversation had to have that conversation with other band members because the one band member was like, well, "Why the fuck are we going on first?" And you're like, "Dude, you don't get it. Like,
Yeah.
we have to." And they're like, "Well, fuck that shit. It's our fuck." I remember having those conversations. Like, I
Oh, well, it's
definitely
actually
remember
funny
that.
because I knew a few stories we were talking to when we were mentioning earlier, like when I was talking to Steve, because a lot of these like stories come back and like you just said it, like people will be like, oh, why are you going on at this time or why are you doing this? And we were bullshitting about something and it brought up this story where the Youth Ahead we're playing a show. I even forget where it was, but I remember at this point, like we had a manager and he kind of took care of a lot of stuff. And I remember he had, I say like contract, but it was really just, a piece of paper signing that we were playing. It
Yeah.
wasn't anything like crazy, but it was just stating that we were going to go on at like, I think it was 9:30 or not 9:15 or whatever it was. And I remember at the show, they added like a ton more bands and this girl was backstage and she was like, fuck those guys. Like whatever, and I'm just sitting there and she's like, they have a lot of nerve. And I was like, oh, is everything all right? And she's like, she didn't know who I was. And she's like, oh, the fucking guys in the Youth Ahead, they have to go on at 9:15 and it's not fair, like this and that. And I was like, well, listen, I was like, first off, I introduced myself and I'm like, the only reason we're going on at 9:15, it's the only reason we agreed to play the show was because last time we played here, we ended up not playing because there's a curfew. So our manager set it all up and they agreed that we would go on at a certain time so we didn't get screwed. And I was like, no one wants to screw your band, but you weren't even on the bill to begin with. I think at that point, it was like one of those, I hate to say it, but it does kind of turn into a business.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you put your dues in, you have to. It's like you have to. You have
Well,
to
yeah.
find this fucking balance with it.
But I didn't want to be a jerk about it, obviously. And I was like, listen, we worked something out. We went on like a little later or whatever, but it was like, these are things we have to do so we don't get screwed. And I guess it's like anything, we were talking about set times and stuff like that. And yeah, it does become kind of people kind of get butthurt about that.
Yeah, I mean it also depends on how you it it, it fucking it's a stupid response or a stupid answer or what the fuck am I trying to say? It's a stupid way to like say this, but it is what it fucking is.
Yeah.
It's just what the fuck it is. Especially if you were one time we had to pull out a contract in the middle of fucking Wyoming or some crap because these guys promised us some shit and like Sean had to go be the bad guy and remember
Yeah.
Brendan from the Lawrence Arms, like he was furious at us because he was like, what the? It was like I was Sean from Lanemeyer, and then it was Brian from Wonder Years because it was the two of us, and then Lawrence Arms were on tour. And I remember like Lawrence Arms gets up, and it's this like hall show in the middle of fucking no, it was North Dakota or South Dakota, and they get up on stage and they're like, and he's kind of like huffing and steaming. I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with him? And then it turned out that because Sean and Brian were like to the promoter, like, yo, like this is what you guys said to us. Like we're on the road, like we're broke. We need this shit to happen. And
Of course.
he got so mad at it. And I'm sitting there going, well, I get the punk rock ethics part of it, but at the same time, we need gas money to drive this next show, which is 10 fucking hours away. And this is what you said you were going to do, promote it. So
Absolutely.
fucking own
No,
up to it.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I agree the whole punk rock thing, but it comes to a point where it's like when you're doing it and you want to do it, it's like, all right, but we always worked everything out too. That was the whole point. But some people get butthurt with that stuff.
So talk about the band. Like talk about how you guys started playing shows and because you guys were a band from 95 to 2005. You were 10 years and then you split at some point and you played. I know you played the reunion show in 2011 and you just said that you played another one 3 years ago.
Yeah, it was about maybe 3-4 years ago. It was at Starland.
Okay, God, that's so fucking amazing. I'm so jealous of you, by the way.
Uh,
So fucking jealous. I mean, granted, like I love the Mexicali show, but like it's been a dream to play a giant venue like Starland or Irving Plaza, which I don't think it's called Irving Plaza anymore. Um,
yeah, I don't think Starline was great, man. I mean, it was definitely, they've always been super nice to us,
but just
but
have that sea of fucking heads in front of you. I never got to see
well,
that.
with that show was also Catch's show though. Catch 22
But
headlined that show.
still, I mean, like we never got to play on a show that was that big, even like with a headlining band. Like we never. I was like that's why I think that's one of the reasons why I started this like podcast. I was like, I want to live through the eyes of the people who did this because it sounds so
Well,
fucking dope.
it's it's crazy, and this is what me and Steve were talking about. Just kind of bullshitting. And yeah, it's definitely crazy. I forget. I was trying to think of it earlier too. It's a John Cusack movie, I believe, but they're talking like it's like the one time where your band opens up for Nirvana.
Oh, High Fidelity.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. I went blank for a second. But it's like certain things like that where it's like in Juno when they're like talking like, oh, and when you open up for this band or whatever. That's almost like the worst thing because it's like,
Yeah, they're not there for you. Well, not
yeah,
saying they're
it's
not there for you, but like the majority of the crowd is.
yeah. Well, no, you know what it is? It's like you
That's
start
a
playing
real
with these
shit thing to
bands.
say to you, and you're like, well, wait a minute, people were there to see this, and I'm like,
Well, no,
I
no,
should
no, no.
backtrack on
With
that.
no. With that, I mean, I just when I mean like is it's you get like a taste of it, and like we were playing with these like
Yeah.
bigger bands, and then like back to work on Monday. So we would like ditch work on like Friday. We would go out and play with like Good Charlotte on Friday, Saturday, and the Boss Tones on Sunday, and then go back to work on Monday.
Wow.
And it killed us.
Well, tell me, okay, so getting up to that, because it kind of goes back to my question of when you guys started the band, you guys, because I mean, I remember being on the same show with you guys, but I don't remember us ever like hanging out after a show, unless my mind is completely
No, it's
blank.
funny. I was thinking that because we played a few bills together. But
Yeah,
when did Casey join your band?
Casey came in, so let's see, Lanemeyer 98 is when we changed the name for Congress Car to Lanemeyer, and then I think a year he came in by tour 5 because the tour 4 is we went with Humble, we were going to break up. Shauna left the band. He came back on that tour to tour with us, and then we went to Garfield and said we weren't breaking up. And then Heiner was just filling in for us while he was playing bass in Humble, and then Casey came in after that, and we went on tour with Sarah Supercat. I'm just like throwing all this out there, but it's like leading to
No,
like
no,
the
cool.
timeline.
I remember the reason I mentioned Casey. I can't remember from like where, but I remember hanging out with him. Like I don't know if it was through maybe LWL. We were super close with those guys, or maybe he was at somewhere where I knew someone. But I remember hanging out with him at a few shows.
Yeah, Casey was great at he wasn't into it for the business shit. He just truly loved the Jersey scene, and I love that about Casey. Like he's like the most
Yeah.
genuine fucking person, and he like yeah he I think he it was a good thing for us, even though I didn't like see that as like a tool. But he would go out and just go to shows, and we would go to shows too. But he went to like a lot, and he would just hang out with everybody and become
Yeah, and
friends with
that's what I
them.
can't, like I said, I can't pinpoint where I know him from, but I remember we used to hang out, and obviously I remember Sean, because I know Sean used to do a lot of your bookings and stuff, right?
Yeah, Sean was like the hammer for
Yeah, I
for
think
the
that's a drummer
band.
thing.
Yeah. Like, well, yeah, if they're not gonna see me in the front on the
Yeah,
mics, and I'm gonna fucking have everyone know who I am. Just kidding.
yeah, you're damn right. but yeah, that's how I know Sean, and so I even forget what we were talking about. I know we might have went off topic here for a second.
No, I know that because I know that we played a bunch of shows. Like we just never. I don't remember ever hanging out because I remember I've said this in multiple interviews where it's like we would hang out with where we would hang out typically was in the van because when we got the van we'd be like, oh, let's go hang out there. But like I would like to try to hang out and walk in the crowd or be by the merch table or something like that and just like talk to people and shit. But
Yeah,
the majority of bands that we would hang out with would be in the parking lot in someone's van with the door open and everyone just go, like gravitate over and bullshit and we'd all hang out. But I mean, we did that with like Humble and Boxcar and
yeah, I used to
LWL and
love those
yeah.
guys, man. No, Boxcar's the best.
I love the fact that I got to like catch up with Newman and fucking B-Nuts.
Oh, yeah. Now see, those dudes used to play the Firehouse all the time,
Yeah.
and it's crazy because I know Polito mentioned like Your Mama Love Us and all those guys, and that's how we met Boxcar and all those dudes, and it's crazy how you meet these people because I met those guys at like Warped Tour '97 while Blink was playing, trying to buy merch. Like,
Wow.
and it's crazy that I remember all that, but it's like, this is how you meet these people. It's crazy.
That's when Damn It came out,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, they were playing the stage. I remember Mark like wearing this. What are those hats with the brim, the brim of it's three all the way around the hat or something?
Oh,
I,
like a fisherman's hat?
it was like a fisherman's hat. I don't know why I remember this detail, but I remember that's when Tom had his bleached hair and he wore the white T-shirt, and then Mark
Yeah.
was dressed like. But when I remember seeing Mark and being like, "Wow, this guy is like, does he give a fuck? Like, he looks like
Like, what's
he's like,
going on?
yeah, looks like he's on a fucking vacation right now."
Well,
Yeah.
talking about music, talking about bands before, I always say like that Warped Tour blew my mind when the Suicide Machines came on. I've never heard anything like that before. To this day, I'm a huge Suicide Machines fan, and I remember their first 2 minutes in, I'm like, oh my god, like if my head could have exploded, it would have,
Oh, they were
and it was like
great.
it's insane.
And that was the era when they were really fucking good. Like
Oh
when
man,
Break
so
the
good.
Glass, that was the
Oh,
single.
I just
So
remember them
amazing.
coming out, and it was their last day of. I think Asbury was pretty much always like the last day, and I remember them coming out and be like, "Oh, we've been on Warped Tour for like 2 months." It was like, yeah, fuck it, we're the Suicide Machines," and it just started playing,
It's
and it
amazing.
was like, "Okay, here we go," and it was unbelievable.
I remember that Asbury Warp Tour too because that's when Lagwagon put out Platinum and Alienate came out. So they were handing out those. They were on cassettes, and that was what they were
Yeah, oh,
handing those out
I
as a
have one.
single. Yeah, and I remember getting it, and I was like, oh, Palladium, and I was like, oh, what's Alien or like Alien 8 instead of like Alienate,
Yeah,
and we put the tape in. It was like that, and so the whole day was just we saw Bigwig play. Roger jumps into the fucking crowd, starts crowd surfing. Tom gets arrested after playing, like for the show for playing Falling Down. See Blink 182.
yeah,
Fucking, I remember Real Big Fish was on, and then like this guy Matt we were hanging out with, he was friends with Aaron, not Aaron the singer, with like the trumpet player. Like all these random fucking things happened
now
that day.
is that the Warped Tour that Humble played?
No, that was the next year because Deftones played that
Okay.
year because
I couldn't
Sean took
remember if
pictures
that
of
was
that.
the Warp Tour. Yeah, no, you're right. I guess it was that second Warp Tour that we went to because that was the first.
Yeah, that was when like the Ernie Ball stage or think
Yeah.
that's when they played on that. Yeah, but okay, so getting back to your band now because I'm like going
Yes.
off there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We keep
so
saying.
so like you guys start the band, you start putting on shows. Like what like how quickly did you find that you guys were actually getting people to you were getting like people to fill up in front of you when you guys are playing? We were like, oh wow,
Well,
like there's like a line, and there's like a couple heads deep of people here like singing along.
I guess with all just like doing the shows, obviously, like any high school band, your friends start coming out, and then after a while of playing, you start to see familiar faces, but say you didn't know prior, and you start to see that happening. And I'll tell you the story. And again, this is what me and like Steve was saying. Oh, I kind of wanted to know more about it, and because again, he remembers everything.
Yeah.
So um
That son of a bitch. I'm just kidding.
that son of a bitch. We were doing we were playing with anything. We are doing any show we physically can get. And there back in the day on 106.3, I think it was like on a Thursday or a Wednesday, but they used to do Mary Elizabeth used to host this show, and you could send in like your music and she'd play like local bands. So every again, I forgot what day it was. I think it was a Thursday, but every Thursday that's what we would do. We would listen to that show, and I would always call and so on and so on. So I don't know if you remember the band Dodgeball, but she was managing Dodgeball. And we were talking to her, and we're like, oh, we sent her some stuff, and we're like, oh, we'd love for you to come check us out or whatever. And I guess we hung out, and long story short, she started managing us. And again, I don't even know what that meant back then. I guess it was just to have someone else kind of believe in your band. It was, I guess, just unbelievable at that point. So it was like, just to have someone make phone calls for you and stuff like that, we were so stoked. She ends up booking. This is from how I remember it. It could be a little different. But I remember Dodgeball, she booked. This was right when Shades Apart record came out. That at they did Birch Hill was her release show, and it was like 4 days before the show. Dodgeball couldn't do it, so we ended up doing it. And in like 4 days' notice, I think we sold like 100 tickets. Like we were so stoked to play Birch Hill. This was like the Super Bowl for us at this point.
Oh, yeah.
It was unbelievable. I mean, from going shows there, and it was like, see everybody there. And this was at the same time, too, I guess, Club N.A. was doing bigger shows, Birch Hill was doing huge shows, and for us to get an opportunity, it was just incredible. And so we sold like over 100 tickets, whatever it was.
Wow.
And I remember that show, after everything, we get off stage, we're kind of all sweaty and still like in awe of what just happened. And I remember this dude comes over to me and he puts his arm around me. He introduces himself and I'm talking to him for a minute. And he's like, hey, can I ask you something? And I was like, yeah. He's like, do you guys want to play Warped Tour? Like coming up in the next like few months or whatever it was, 2 months. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, my name's John. I'm your new manager now. Let's go in the back and talk. And I was like, what the fuck is going on? And it was John D from Concerts East. We went back there and, Mary Elizabeth was back there and we're talking and she's like, yeah, John's going to take care of you guys and put you on some shows and see what you guys can do. And, and so on and so on. And I think like a week later, like we were playing with like Less Than Jake and it was just like, what the fuck just happened?
Hold on. This sounds exactly like the fucking scene in The Wonders where...
Oh, yeah.
Or not The Wonders, in... what's
That Thing You Do.
That Thing You Do, where the Wonders, they're like the manager hands them off to fucking...
Yeah, in a trailer. They're like, in like a truck.
Yeah, the truck is like, he's this nice man with his chili.
Yeah, he's cooking chili in his truck. It's pretty much then... And that's why we named our record. We named one of our records The Wonder Years. And it's funny just for the fact, like, and again, I'm sure there was other things that happened. This is how I remember it in my head.
Yeah.
And John started managing us. And for those who don't know who John D is from Concerts East, John's Max Cruz. So he started Bamboozle and everything like that.
Oh, wow. Jesus Christ. That's crazy.
Yeah. So he was the first. We were the first band that he managed. And actually, again, on how I remember it, we were doing something and I remember he would always go by John. And then one day, like we get an email and it said Max Cruz. And I'm like, I call him up. I'm like, yo, who the fuck is Max Cruz? He's like, oh, yeah, no, that's me now. He's like, I go by Max Cruz so he could separate what he was doing with his shows and with us. And that's from what I recall. I think that was like the first of the whole Max Cruz thing getting together.
So, and that ended up doing, well, Bamboozle was morphed from Skate and Surf, right? It was Skate and Surf went to Bamboozle and then later on it went back to Skate and Surf, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it ended up going back to Skate and Surf. Like we were on the bill. We did the first Skate and Surf. And actually we played all the Skate and Surfs except when it came back. We weren't a band at that point.
So tell me about the band. Like you guys, where did you record your first record?
We did Keith. Well, actually, going back a little bit.
Yeah.
We were huge Felix Frump fans. I know. Okay. I know some people mentioned them before in the podcast.
Yeah.
But that's one band that does not get the credit. Like without Felix Frump, I mean, those dudes totally helped us out, and they put out records with their friend Miguel that had a label called Red Iguana.
Yeah.
And he put out our first record.
Okay.
Recording it, I'm kind of like hazy on where we did it. I'm sure it's going to come back to me like, oh, I don't know. I did not remember all of this.
Yeah, you're going to be so bad. Like, God damn it.
But it's from what I remember him putting out Keeps You Moving. And it was like insane for us. Like the fact that we were on the same label as Felix Frump and would play with those guys all the time. And we were doing stuff obviously before the whole movie kind of thing happened to us, where it does sound like a fairy tale. And for us, it was.
Okay, go on.
No, go ahead.
No, like, did you guys, it just seems, because I mean, we're obviously in this conversation, we're jumping all over the place away. We're talking a lot about the scene, and that's been a huge part of it. And then you guys, so we're kind of, it's like we're just giving tiny samples of the band and all. And it went from, like you playing fucking air drums and then you like playing with Less Than Jake and Catch 22, and then you guys, so it's like the timeline of talking about you guys isn't like completely in order, but I
jump around a lot.
Did you guys, when you got together in the beginning and you and Sean like were having your band meetings for your air band
for our air band,
like when did you guys start? Like, when you guys started playing in Jersey, like, how soon were you playing in Jersey before you were like, hey, man, like, I think we kind of want to do this? Like, we want to make this into something.
Well, you know what it was? I think when we first, like every young band playing, we were obsessed with playing. And it's funny. I wish I could find that list. We literally wrote down a list and Weston's one of my favorite bands, like Play with Weston. And we wrote these bands. I remember Less Than Jake being on there and Shades Apart. And we wrote all these things down. And I remember it was like this is our goal. And when we play with Shades Apart, like it was like, again, I don't know if we like checked it off on the list, but I like kind of like, hey, we can check that off. And like, I remember those things happening. And I think as we were kind of going doing these and that list kind of got checked off, it was like, wow, like, wait a minute, we just did kind of what we wanted to do. Like all we wanted to do was be part of punk rock.
So I want to touch on that because I've talked about this a lot where it's this weird balance of this is a very nostalgic podcast and it's like reminiscing about stuff and talking about like the scene, but there's also this like piece of this too where I bring up a lot where it's like, the thing I've seen is a lot of bands that did what they wanted to. They legit had a very strong focus and went after it. And I think like even for me, right? Like I've noticed that like starting this podcast, it was as simple as I did the same thing. I wrote a list and I reached out to people and just said, "Hey, like would you want to do this?" But it was very specific of what I wanted this to be.
Yeah.
And I've talked to so many people where even in Chrissy from Element 101, they talk about Tooth and Nail, and it's so weird of how her beginning of her story where she's talking in the beginning, and then they wrote Tooth and Nail was like a label that they liked, and then they end up getting on there. And then you guys write this list of these bands you want to play with, and you end up doing that. I think there's something too where people are like, they imagine, this is where I get a little weird, but they imagine like that we are already there doing it, and all of a sudden you're like, holy shit, like we're actually doing these things.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
You have to be very clear about what you want to do, and it really, so many of these interviews I've had, I'm like, wow, these guys were so clear, and it fucking worked out for them too, for what they wanted.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, the last thing on that list was signed to a major label, so that never worked out. But but
you can't dismiss. Yeah, but you can't dismiss. Like sometimes the list doesn't always come to fruition.
Of course.
But I mean,
of course,
it's pretty impressive though, because I mean, playing with Less Than Jake and shit like that. I mean, that's. To me, that's
no. It's to us. I think it started as like a joke. We went to a diner, got back, and made the list, and then it was like, as we were doing it, yeah, we were very driven. Like me and Sean and the other guys in the band, Chris and Chris. Like, well, we were a 3-piece and became a 4-piece. But anytime in the Youth Ahead, all of us loved what we were doing. I mean, again, not to sound like corny, but I love punk music. I mean, punk rock changed my life, and I think. All we wanted to do, like if you liked the Youth Ahead or hated the Youth Ahead, whatever it was, all we ever wanted to do was be a part of this thing.
How old were you guys when you started actually playing? Because I just want to like kind of build like, because having that mentality too throughout where you're going, I love this thing so much. Were you guys 16? Were you in your late teens?
I believe 15 when I first started playing.
Okay. And that stayed through, like that was your drive. You're like, I don't care what we do. I need to be like in this thing, and that's going to be my driving force.
And I guess we didn't even know what it was at first. It was like, what is this? What's going on? And Sean being older than me, like he was more into like Minor Threat and everything. And I think it all kind of came together. And I'm a huge ska fan. Like I love ska music, and we just kind of connected with the whole pop punk thing, and that's what we kind of grabbed onto.
Yeah. You guys had a very, like I was watching a couple of videos online, and you guys like had a very like the stage presence was like a mixture of the Ataris towards the end before they got weird, and and
I was at that show when he threw the drums in Asbury.
Oh, I did hear about that.
Oh, it's crazy.
Was that recent?
No, it was like a few years ago, but
okay.
I mean, I love the Ataris, but it happens.
Yeah, it just happens. Sometimes people just throw fucking drums. You know what happens?
Yeah,
I hear about that a lot.
But
it's like you guys had a very pop punk, like you had a very simple plan-ish, would I dare to say?
Yeah, I mean, well, I mentioned them before, but like when we were playing a lot, you had bands like Good Charlotte and Mess just coming out.
Yeah,
and we were lucky enough to like play with these dudes like right when their first records came out. So it's like we would play a lot with those guys. We got to become friends with those guys. And it was like, that's kind of the whole style. And I hate to sound corny too, but I guess we like found our home. Just that whole pop punk kind of, we just kind of fell right in there.
Did you guys get to tour on a bus at all?
No. And we would do some touring. We'd mostly do long weekends, and stuff like that. And no, we never done the bus. We're very lucky enough to do a lot of festivals through who our manager was and so on. So
did you guys do long tours though, or did you guys keep it to weekends and keep it local?
No, we've done, well, it's actually funny. With work and everything, that was the thing too. It's like you have to be able to work because you need to live. So
yeah.
That was always kind of hard when we would go on tour. We actually went on a tour without Sean, and that's pretty much when we got another guitar player / singer, and he kind of like, we would tour with him while Sean stayed back home and would take care of like the website and take care of all this stuff. And like we did that like once or twice, and then it was like, all right, we're just gonna stay a 4-piece and always tour together. But we tried everything at that point. Like it was, what can we do to constantly play without with keeping everything going here?
I just want to point out so that you guys still have your website up.
Oh yeah, we don't even run that though. So I don't know even like who runs that,
but I gotta point out my favorite thing on this is you had the youth head, you had combs
and air fresheners.
Oh wow, you do have air fresheners. That's
well,
amazing.
What's funny?
Wait, no, with air fresheners? No, wait, they're not on there. Oh, that's a sticker.
Oh, the air fresheners aren't on there?
Now that I see, you better talk to this person who you don't know is running your site and tell them.
Oh yeah. Someone said like a few years back, someone was like, your website's still up. I think my buddy bought like a Youth Ahead hat not too long ago. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know who does that. So
I don't know who's going to fulfill that order, but you might be waiting for a minute.
He got the hat though, which was cool. So, I mean, but
who got the money?
Yeah, who knows? But he got his hat, that's all that matters.
Someone's making a fucking killing off your merch, and you guys have no idea.
Off our hats and our stickers and combs.
Yeah, just combs.
I was really big on the whole merchandise, like combs, air fresheners. Like that was like my favorite thing to do was doing merchandise.
Oh yeah, I mean Bigwig, they were like the
kings of it.
Oh, the kings of it. Like it didn't have the air freshener, but they had the T-shirt with. I told the story when I was talking to Tom about the air freshener shirt that just said "ass."
Yes.
Oh god damn.
Well, now I know I was going to say, listen to the podcast. I know you guys obviously talk about a ton of bands. One band from Jersey that was phenomenal was Kid with Man Head, and I don't know if you remember those guys, but those are the dudes that got me into the whole merch thing. Like those guys were, I believe, 2 of them worked for different merch companies, so those guys like got me into everything.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, I know the name. I don't remember the band themselves, but the name.
Oh, they were great. Yeah, great band.
Were they a local band?
What happened?
Were they a local band? I felt like they were a bit bigger.
They were bigger. Yeah, at that point, I mean, they would tour, like they would go out and do like certain runs with like Bad Religion and stuff like that. I know they were close with those guys.
Jesus, that's awesome.
Yeah, and they were awesome dudes, and so, but those are the guys that got us into the whole merch thing.
Okay, so Steve mentioned that there was like a label thing with you guys, and he was like,
yes.
I don't know if he's gonna want to talk about it. I was like, well, I'm gonna ask because it's been so long since all of this stuff happened, unless it was like last week and you got fucked over. But like, I was very intrigued by it because he was like, he's gonna have a really good story potentially about this if he wants to talk about it. So I'm gonna put it out there. And...
No, of course. Well, with us, like I said, this is how I remember things. But we were managed by John, or Max, I should say, and we were doing a lot of bigger shows and so on and so on. And this wasn't like the Youth Ahead didn't break up after this. Like after we parted ways with John, we still did a lot of stuff as far as doing showcases in New York and LA and all that stuff. But there was a point within playing and everything that I don't even know how this happened, but one of the dudes from 92.3 got our CD, and he played it like a beginning of it.
K-Rock?
And who was the dude? Was it Cabby?
Well, no, just from K-Rock though.
Yes, from K-Rock.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
I believe it was Cabby that like played an intro of like one of our songs, one hit song, and it was crazy. Like in that day, like John's phone's ringing. We're getting emails, we're getting everything. And dude, like 2-3 days later, we're in New York. We're sitting there with was it J Records with Clive Davis's label.
Oh, Jesus.
And we're talking to all these labels, and everything just started kind of getting crazy. With all this said and done, like we're doing a ton of shows, we're talking to a bunch of labels. It kind of, at one point, John was kind of too busy doing everything else. So it was like, hey, why don't you, I'm going to set you guys up with a different manager, and so on and so on. Me and John became very good friends. So it was like, all right, we talked to other managers. We were going to go with one. John calls me up, is like, yo, dude, I'll tell you what, I don't want to stop managing you guys. Let's just ride it out. And I was like, absolutely, let's do it. The story kind of goes, again, how I remember it. The story kind of goes, there was a few deals that he kind of nixed before we got to him. Or like, we've heard other people say, oh, you know, there was a few deals that went sour if he didn't get back to someone or whatever it be. But I know a bunch of the guys in the band for a while were like, certain things should have been brought to our attention. Like our career kind of got away from us. And I think that's the best way to say it. And I don't even know, like, it's funny, like, because we signed to other labels, we ended up going with other managers at that point as well. And one of the managers we got worked for John. And I remember he managed, I forget the name of the band he managed at that point, but they were on, I believe, Universal. We were very friendly with Shades Apart and all those bands at the time. And so we were shopping to there as well. And the rumors were surfacing where there was a few deals. I say a few, I believe there was definitely one, but at least two that didn't even get brought to our attention and was like kind of nixed. I don't know why it was like nicked right before or whatever, but really never got to us. And so it kind of things were like, oh, what's going on? Like we're hearing this and we're hearing that. And we kind of just were like, you know what? We just, I guess, both parted ways. And it was kind of even weird. When we parted ways, I remember we were at Skate and Surf and John was like, yo, can I talk to you? And I was like, yeah. I remember him, like, he put his arm around me. And again, me and John were super close. And I was like, listen, during this, like, we became friends. Everything's kind of just been crazy. Like, I can't work with the band anymore. I got this going on. And obviously a lot's going on. And I think at that point, I know it sounds weird, but like, this is when a lot of like chat rooms and stuff were kind of coming up. So we've had stuff where like, you know, I guess the whole rumor mill starts like, oh, this guy said this and that guy said this. And it was all stupid. And it was just, a lot of things just kind of got out of control. But as I remember that there was just a few kind of labels that didn't want to deal with this at that point. And I guess it was because I don't know if John just blew him off or whatever.
So they would contact him directly, and he wouldn't either like he wouldn't get back to them, or he was just like, nah, we're not interested. So it never got to you guys actually making a decision.
Yeah. Yes. And long story short, that's really what it comes down to, that it was never really brought to us. But whatever happened, it was never really brought to us. But I know for a while, a lot of guys were very upset about that. And I mean, the way I look at it, this dude made our band. We would have nothing without this guy. I'm nothing but 100% grateful for everything that he did for us. At the same time, I mean, like, you know, we're in like record offices with this guy and like, we have no idea what's going on. And, you know, we kind of let him run the show, and I'm sure his story might be different or whatever it be. But again, this is how I remember it.
Do you guys still talk?
No, not really. I mean, if I see him or whatever, like I love John. You know, if I see him, you know, we kind of, hey, what's going on? But I guess just things got weird. He kind of obviously had a lot of success with Bamboozle and everything, and yeah, it just kind of got weird.
Right.
But you know, I remember just it's funny too, because a few people was like, yeah, you know, at one point we were all sitting down and it was like, oh, do you even want to know some of the deals that were like brought to his attention? And we're like, no, because they never got brought to our attention. We don't know what's real, what's not, or whatever it be. But this is the guy that made our band.
It's kind of weird though that, like, again, I'm just going to talk, but it's weird. It is odd that if these things were coming up, there's the decision going on where you're going, where did that come from? If it was true, and if it, I don't know. It's like, how did so many fucking people hear about that, and outside of like you guys, you were direct contact with them?
A lot of them were in his office as well. and we all had the same friends and so on and so on. But it's see, when I say this too, it's kind of, the Youth Ahead was still a band after this for a while, and we still did our thing, showcasing with other managers we had after that. And again, in no means am I sitting here 10 years later going, wah. Like, I'm grateful for
Yeah, you're
every
being
single
very
thing we
PC
did.
about it.
Yeah, no, I am. It's, in all honesty, dude, it took a long time. Like,
Oh,
it took a
okay.
long time to
I gotcha.
understand all that. And it's
Right.
like, it really is. It's like, no matter what, I think we let our career slip out of our hands. It happens. After that, we put out the last EP the Youth Ahead ever put out was with a label called Royal Crest. And it was like a silent partner, and it was Phil Sneed from Story of the Year. And
Oh, wow.
we put out like a 5-song EP, and we shopped, and we played for like Maverick down in LA and stuff like that. And so
Wow.
it was never like, we felt like, well, I guess the best word to say is missed opportunities. I don't want to be like, oh, well, we never got a deal because of this and that, because that's just childish to say. But we definitely feel that there was missed opportunities that we weren't aware of.
I mean,
I guess that's the best way to word it.
yeah, I mean, again, and at the end of the day, things that I've been kind of learning more as I get older is everyone has the ability to make that choice to get involved or not get involved.
Yeah,
And so yeah, whatever happened fucking happened, and you can go back, but at the same time, it's something happened on his side and something didn't happen on your side where you guys,
I'm assuming maybe he called, like, he was bluffing, and he was like, oh, we're gonna hold off, and it just, at that point, someone went in another direction, and then maybe an opportunity got missed. I mean, at the end of the day, there was supposedly opportunities missed, but again, who knows?
Did you want that life though? I mean, it's kind of a stupid question. I have to reword this. Did you want if any of those things did come to fruition, and this is not, now this is complete speculation, where you could guess all you want to, but what would you have imagined? Like, what year was this around, real quick, like when this
Uh,
happened?
I mean, I'm guessing like 2002, 2003.
So
I'm
right when
assuming, because
everything, right when shit like really broke, or like our scene was where it broke from the underground blew up. It wasn't in your face like MTV and shit. And then 2002 is where it like put it in front of fucking everybody.
yeah.
Like really put it in front of everybody.
Well, you know what too is, it was a crazy time as well, because there's a lot of bands just coming out that we sounded a lot alike. And I remember when Red Jumpsuit Apparatus came
Apparatus.
out.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was gonna say, I don't know if you remember that band. They had
Hmm.
some hits,
Did they
and
have some they had
was
some
it?
controversy against them too, didn't they?
No, I think you're thinking of, oh man, I know what, but you're thinking of that one band that sang Rooftops. I can't think of that name.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't have to get
Anyway,
into that, but
yeah.
anyway, yeah.
Regardless, what you call it? It's funny. I remember we played Warped Tour, and one of the dudes from their label, I think again, I could be totally wrong. I think it was like Hollywood or whatever the label they were on at that point. But I remember it was like, oh, I love you guys, so on and so on and so on. I just signed these guys. Let's see how they do. Let's see the numbers they hit. And then things just move on. People lose their jobs. People move on. And it's like, all right, well, we just got like all this hype up, and now we're starting from zero again.
Mm. Yeah, I mean at that point too, doing it for that amount of time, you're going, fuck this.
Yeah.
Like
No,
I'm
listen, man,
over it.
it was definitely, I always play the what if game. And I mean, to answer your question, I honestly, and again, it's sometimes, oh, he's playing like safe when he answers this, but in all honesty, I feel if we sign like a major deal, the it's 1 in a trillion now at that point of anyone hearing our song or even our record coming out. Now, I know a ton of bands that got signed that never put their record out.
Yeah, it doesn't guarantee you shit. It just guarantees you a contract with maybe some money. I mean, if you listen to, like you said, you listen to a bunch of these, if like James from Fun Size when he talks about
Yes.
getting signed, and that was a whole fucking ordeal where they were like, oh, MCA, 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 and they finally do it, and then like 9/11 happens, and
Yeah.
it just
No,
everything
absolutely.
just goes to fucking shit. So yeah, you can speculate and things like that, but it's more like it's more of just interesting to hear stories from that time about just stuff like this because it's interesting. It is interesting. It also helps people, and I don't really know what the age range is. I think it's the majority of people listening to this are in their late 30s or 40s and early 40s. That's like probably the average. I don't really believe that there are kids. I say this, oh my God, they're in their 20s. I'm calling them kids. There's people in their 20s who are a majority are listening to this, but if they are, there is a lesson, so to speak, of just don't just hand your shit off to other people and just say like you got this. Like you have to have your eyes on that shit.
Of course, of course. And you know what? Real quick, I wanted to touch base because I remember when you were talking to some kid, I should say, when you're talking to Chris,
Chris, yeah.
and it was awesome. It was awesome to hear that whole story and how everything kind of happened. But the point is, what I'm trying to make is when we did these reunion shows and stuff like that, you hear these stories like people like, oh, about your band, or like, dude, me and my brother became super close because of your band and stuff like that. That's like the greatest thing you could ever hear. And when we did those reunion shows, one story I think that Steve was talking about, we going back, I guess like 6 years ago when they did, maybe longer, but Bamboozle, our guitar player, our Chris was in another band. They were playing Bamboozle, and I guess their manager was talking to someone at Bamboozle, and it was like, hey, uh, I guess they were trying to get on the 1 year, whatever it be. And it was like, how can I get them to play? And it was like, I'll tell you what, we want the youth ahead to play. And like, yeah, it's not going to happen. Those dudes haven't talked in a while and so on and so on. It was like, I'll tell you what if we give them they open main stage and we, whatever, we'll make everything right. Like, let's have them open up Bamboozle. Dude, we all met up. We were totally into it. And we're like, let's do it. 3 days before Bamboozle, we get the sheet. We're not opening main stage. We're like headlining like the Zoomy stage the same time Taking Back Sunday's playing.
Oh,
Like
God.
this is the youth ahead. You know what I mean? Like this is like are you kidding me? Like we have contracts signed. Like what is going on? Like,
And
and it was like
John's
this was
running
always our
Bamboozle
luck.
too.
What happened?
And John's running Bamboozle?
At this point, yeah. I mean, it wasn't just him, but yeah, it was. He had his hand in Bamboozle. Like, I mean, I don't know if he had a hand in anything as far as that, but that was like the whole thing. It was like, why are we cursed? Like, we did everything we are supposed to do. What are we not supposed to play? But the point of the story is playing that.
Don't try.
Yes, give up. No, the point of this story is I remember like this girl came up to me and she's like, I'm talking to her and like, dude, I'll admit it, man, I'm crying. Like, she's like, I was just in a motorcycle accident a few days prior. She's like, I had to come to see you guys. She's like, you guys meant so much to me growing up. Dude, I'm like crying. She's crying.
Jeez.
These two brothers come up, which with us, everything we did, it was if we played a show, it was play as hard as you can, so we're asked back to play again, and that's how
Wow,
we
that's awesome.
always. That's how I always did everything. And I remember when we first started playing, when we first got together with John when he was managing us, one of the other guys at Concerts East, all these guys were huge promoters at this point. I remember we're playing like the trade wins with like Jimmy's Chicken Shack. I don't know if you remember those dudes back in the day.
I do remember that name.
And
Yeah.
well, it's funny. I remember we played. I was nervous because we were playing in front of all these promoters, and like I remember we play the show. I'm talking to Tony and John or whatever afterwards, and John was saying like, yeah, everyone thought it was good, but they thought you could have played like harder. And I'm like, really? And I'm all nervous, and they're like, yeah. And John was joking around, and John's like, yeah. Tony was saying like, next time you play, make sure you throw up afterwards. So a
Like
month later,
like
we're playing.
Ascenders.
Well, yeah. So yes. So a month later, we're playing trade wins. I forget who we were playing with. I come out. It was a sold out show. I come out. I throw up. He comes up to me, goes, "That's what I'm fucking talking about." And that was the whole point of just everything we did. We thought we had to nail it just so we can move on to the next step.
Jesus.
Playing those bigger shows is like, dude, it's like anything, man. It's like a drug. As soon as I think the first, well, I could actually tell you, the first sold out show we played was with Cooter and Less Than Jake at Club N.A. And that was like we were bit. The bug bit us, and it was from that doing those shows. I mean, we're very, very, very lucky to be able to do that.
Did you find though that after doing that and you went to the top of the mountain and then you'd play a local show where like 10 kids showed up that you gave less?
No, no, you know what? It's actually funny because mentioning that convention hall, one of the convention hall shows we played, it was actually Less Than Jake and Bigwig and what is it? The Big Blue Meanies, I believe.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And I remember we opened when we were done playing. We packed our stuff in the van and we drove. Actually, I'm living in Union Beach now. We drove to Keyport, which is right next to us. We played a Sweet 16. Soon as we were done playing, we got back in the van and made it to watch Less Than Jake at Convention Hall. And we just looked at it as that's what we do. Like we play as much as we can. And I would like to say, I mean, or we were probably super tired, but I like to say we gave it our all just as much as Sweet 16 as we did with Less Than Jake. I could be wrong. We were probably terrible, but I mean,
It was hard. I mean, I remember playing a show. The first time we got like a quote unquote pit, and I've talked about this before, was at the Boot and Elks Lodge. And actually, you know what? I feel like I keep fucking this. It's the Boot and Knights of Columbus. I keep saying Elks Lodge, right? It's
I
the
think
Knights
I
of
said
Columbus.
Elks Lodge too.
I know,
Yeah,
but
I think I
I've
said
said
Elks.
I've caught myself in other episodes where I'm like, oh, it's the fucking Knights of Columbus, I believe. Anyway, yeah, I think it's the Knights of Columbus. So we played there, and it was the first time we actually had a crowd. They didn't even give a shit. They just ran around in circles. We're going, oh my god, they're moshing. This is crazy. And then the next day we played in Rockaway at this VFW hall, where it was the first time. Actually, that night is where I bought Hello Bastards. I remember this. And
Oh, nice.
but we were playing and no one moved, and I was like, but isn't this gonna always fucking happen? And it was such a lesson that because that's like where it really establishes as a band for me, established like, okay, the expectation of this is just that you need to expect to show the fuck up and just play however the fuck you want to, and the crowd isn't going to decipher anything.
Well, yeah, but it is very hard. We one story that comes to mind is we played the Pipeline with
Yeah.
Felix Trump, and it was packed and it was fucking unbelievable. There's some as we're playing, some dudes like naked on stage, like jumping. It was crazy. It was one of the best shows we remember playing. So
Amazing.
IDK did their release show, I believe, like a month later, and they're like, "Dude, you got to come and play, whatever, whatever," because we're all hanging out, and we're like, "Yeah, of course, of course." Even though it was like, we're a different style of music, we're like, "Oh, of course." Man, that show was a lot different than the Felix Trump show, and I remember all of us being like, "Dude, pack this shit up, let's get the fuck out of here." And it was like, and it happens, but the point being, it is a huge learning experience.
But it builds the muscles of band. Like you can't that's like touring. There's the bands like but the funny thing is that bands like even Less Than Jake, right? They've been touring for so long. It was like when I talked to Vinny from Less Than Jake, and they hit a wave a lot sooner. I mean, yeah, they had the shitty shows and stuff, but then they caught it and they caught fire, and they've been on it ever since the late '90s, right? And
Yeah, oh,
they
yeah,
still play big
absolutely.
shows. But you even watch those bands where they are now for decades playing these big shows, and then all of a sudden that becomes kind of like meh, and they don't want to tour. Granted, they also now have families and they getting older, like you don't really want to go and travel and do that shit. But there's just this point of where you have to just say, as a young band, it's I want to like you go to a show like in the city or wherever it is where whoever's listening to this like where their big concert or their big venue was, and if you want to be in a band like you like I want to do this, and then you start playing and it doesn't happen right away, and I think that's what divides, it separates the bands from sticking together, or certain people from wanting to stick with music, because they're like, well, fuck, man, it's not going to be that big all the time. And you're like, no, like you have to show up and just be like, I want to create really good music and I want to just fucking feel it. And
Yeah,
yes, there
no,
is
no,
the
that makes
dynamic.
sense.
Yeah, I mean,
No, that
granted, like
definitely makes sense.
I can't go back to myself and say that, but I mean, there was a point where I was playing back then where I just started saying, you know what? I'm gonna create this little fucking space that's about 3 feet in diameter around where I am, and I'm gonna just lose my shit and be in it. And at the end, I hope that something comes out of this, and that, like I really wanted it to. But in that moment, like I would just lose myself.
Yeah, no, I mean it totally makes sense. I look at it, especially looking back and listening to the podcast and reminiscing on everything, that I just miss playing with my buddies. Like
Yeah.
that's the main thing. Like at those shows, I was just I think so stoked that we were all together, kind of hanging out, and then we got to play together, which was cool. But the fact that we were at those shows, I mean, yeah, you have some good ones, you have some bad ones. We were lucky enough to have some good shows, and definitely stoked on that. But yeah, you just have to learn from the bad ones. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah, and granted, it did suck though, because you'd show up and there'd be like 5 people. I mean, I do remember when we were on tour, I would say to like Sean or Casey, and they I don't know if they remember this, but I'd be like, in my head, I'd say even if there's 4 kids there, you'd have to kick ass so hard that
Oh, absolutely. That they
that
tell four of their
they told
friends
four
and
of their
so on and
friends,
so on.
and
Yeah.
that shit started to fucking happen. And you're like, wow, but people come back. We'd be in the middle of Chicago or Illinois in this place that's like by fucking train tracks, and no one. I would never go there randomly, or I would never like drive my ass there unless I was playing a show. And these kids would just pack the place, and they just go nuts. You're like, this space by a fucking tr- train tracks in the middle of fucking Illinois in this shady ass area. Like we just created, all of us just made this thing happen. That
Yeah. No,
that
and it's
it's
special,
amazing.
when you think about it, it really is.
Yeah. It was just that space. It was that area where we all needed to escape, and we did it in this shady fucking whatever, like I don't know, warehouse center somewhere. It's
Yeah,
just I don't know.
see,
It's
see, for
amazing.
us, that was at Utica. For some reason, we always had, when we would go to Utica or anywhere in that area, it was always really, really good to us. And that was like the joke where it was like, oh man, like we're home. It was awesome. Obviously, Jersey always was great to us, but it was like playing, when you're far, when you get that one show where it's like, oh man, there's like 200 people here. This is insane.
Oh, you'd always want to go back there. Like, how can we
Oh, of
fit this in the
course.
schedule every fucking time? Like,
Yeah. Oh, it'd be
always.
unbelievable. Those are some of the stories that I remember. It's funny listening to everyone's stories and stuff like that. I always try to think of like I try to remember like a lot of funny things that happened on the road or at certain clubs, and it's definitely we did a lot of stupid shit back then.
Yeah, it was awesome. Do you actually, real quick, just for my own personal um, benefit, I don't know how to word that. Do you find that, like, when you are listening to episodes, this is the only question I'm going to ask about this. I'm not going to dive into it, but do you find that every time you listen to an episode, you are finding new memories from back then?
Oh, 100%.
Okay,
Well,
just want
that's
to make
what
sure.
even talking to Steve, it was like, man, when we started talking, it was funny because Steve's like, oh, I remember when we were doing the Cheesequake shows. Steve was like, oh, I remember calling you and like trying to get some shows or whatever. And he was talking, and I was like, oh man, I kind of sound like a dick in this story. I was like, dude, was I a dick? He's like, because we became really good friends with LWL. And I was like, man, the way you're telling this story, man, kind of makes me feel like I was kind of a dick. And he was like, no, he's like, because I think I was like, oh, you could play, but you have to open or whatever it was. And we, like I said, they played, obviously we became really close and everything. But I always think now, like every time, like you said, if there's someone's story, I'm trying to think back. Wait a minute, like I vaguely remember that, or hey, I remember something totally different happening.
Why do you find that that's important to you now? Like, why do you find that thinking back to 20 years in the scene? Because, granted, like when I interview every fucking time I interview someone, I completely forget where I am. Like, I'm sitting in my bedroom in my apartment, my door's closed, so my dog doesn't sit here and annoy me, and I, for an hour, now an hour and a half, I have transported back to that time. I forget that I'm in North Carolina. I forget that I'm in my apartment, and I literally live in that headspace the entire time.
No,
Like,
yeah, I could see that.
but like for you, why do you find that to be important?
You know what? It's almost like I feel like I blocked a lot of that stuff out, and not to get like depressing, like the depressing moment of the show, but I think for a long time I kind of felt like, oh, punk rock turned its back on me, and I didn't listen to music, and I kind of like just closed that chapter of my life, which is silly, but so I kind of feel like listening to some stories and reminiscing, it just brings that all fluttering back on why we did it in the first place.
I was gonna say that's so funny. It's so funny that it like initially ended with such a bitter taste, but to go back in hindsight, it has such a positive like
Yeah,
outlook, which is weird.
you know what's funny, and I think that if anyone really kind of took the time to break down them playing music, some of the best memories I have, like I remember we were playing. My long story short, my friend Roger that got me into the Bosstones was I'm a diehard Bosstones fan, but Roger was like the number one Bosstones fan ever. And what I remember when someone's like, oh, what do you remember like playing music? We played with the Bosstones at Birch Hill, and I remember calling Roger and telling him that we were doing a few shows with them that weekend and that he was coming with us. And he was like, shut the fuck up. Like, there's no way. And I remember playing, setting up at Birch Hill, and the Bosstones were sound checking. And Roger was the only one sitting there on our equipment watching them play. And to me, well, greatest moment of Youth Ahead history, to watch my buddy watch his favorite band by himself. And that's like, that would always stick with me. And I guess for a long time, I just forgot those stories.
Yeah, because I mean, just life gets in. Like, you have 10 year or 20 years of everything piling up of everything else in life, and then to
Oh, of
kind of
course.
break that apart and say, oh yeah, there was that time where it was before we knew. I think it might be just, and I'm not going to stick with this, but I think there's a point where I look back a lot, and I think that's why I continue to do this, or I mean I continue this because it's just awesome to just like talk about, hear people's stories and talk to them. But there's there's a set of eyes, or a pair of eyes that I had back when I was 17, and I remember how I looked at this wide open space of where I could go, and now being in that future and looking back
Yeah.
at that and seeing that gap that's connected there, like I like to go back to that time and think of how I thought shit was gonna be.
Oh, of course. Of course.
And it's
And
like,
well, touching
yeah,
base on that too, I mean, it's like, I guess kind of the same thing. You see these people all the time. Like you said in the beginning of this, like, oh, I don't really remember us like kind of really hanging out. Obviously, we were at shows together, but everyone, like, you become friends with these people and you see them all the time, and like then you don't see them anymore. Like me talking to Steve the other day was awesome. Just catching up, and all these stories come fluttering back. It's definitely funny. There's no doubt about it.
yeah, it's a nice break from, I guess, the adult bullshit that we didn't think we were going to have to deal with one day.
Oh, of course. When I get off the phone, I got to go in the house, and I have 11-month-old, which is the greatest. But I got to change her, and then this whole thing, and I got to be an adult.
I got to not practice for a show coming up this weekend. I got to go change some shit.
Yeah, yeah. So it is what it is. But playing music was a huge part of my life. I tell my wife all the time. And again, it's going back to like this list that we did. I guess going back like almost like I guess 10 years ago, they did. Now this I guess answers a question too that we talked about, like what if, or this could have happened, or what would have happened. I guess like 10 years ago, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame Warped Tour did like a whole like capsule of like Warped Tour like memorabilia and all this shit. And there's a book of that Kevin put like all the bands that played Warped Tour and he remembers playing. And I remember getting a phone call that someone that went there and saw like the Youth Ahead in this, like in the list. And for me, it all made sense after that.
Oh,
Like I
wow.
wasn't bitter about anything. I didn't give a shit about anything. All we ever wanted to do was be part of punk rock. Even if it's a little fucking note in
Sliver.
a book,
Yeah.
that's all we ever wanted. And again, like, yes, I would have loved to fucking sign a major deal and fucking be on tour with Good Charlotte right now, but that didn't happen. But I got what I wanted.
Yeah, and I think that's it. It's good when you can look back and have that instead of looking back and being like, well, it's like if someone asks you what your day is like and you go, well, I don't know, the fucking coffee I got was shitty and I had to wait 20 minutes. Like
Yeah,
you
just
start you,
complaining.
you complain and you talk about stuff and it's
Of
nice.
course.
It's and there is that part of you, it's human nature, but if you can stop yourself and go back and be like, yeah, but like you could sit there and be like, we could have talked for this entire time. You could have been like, well, here's all the fucking shit that didn't happen. Here's why I'm upset. And
No,
I
of
have yet
course.
to talk to anybody where they're going, yeah, but fuck that scene and fuck they everyone's always has a positive outlook on it because they came out of it just looking back and saying like, yeah, that was some dope shit. That was a good fucking
No, of
time.
course.
Yeah.
I think you have to look at it as that's the only way to look at it, or you drive yourself fucking
Oh
nuts.
yeah,
But
you go
that's the only way
insane.
to look at it. And again, like talking about before, like just past managers and stuff, we wouldn't have done anything without anyone that's ever like helped our band. Like they're the reason why we did anything. They're the reason why I can say, oh, we got what we wanted was because everyone helped. And that's what being in the scene was. Everyone helped each other.
Yeah, and 100%. And then you can like connect with everyone and have these conversations where you can just it's like that's like the glue of how people can like talk and I hope that more people, and I am going to wrap this up, but I hope that more people, or I hope that somehow people like listening to this are reconnecting with other people, but they're also not just reconnecting through phone calls and shit like that. They're actually able to go, at least if it's once in the next year or the previous year, from right now when this started, they would, hey man, like, do you want to meet at this spot and just grab a beer even for like an hour? Like,
Yeah, that'd
go to
be
this
awesome if
go to
people
this
doing that.
fucking Legion Hall or go to this club that we used to go to or just go to this spot that had nothing to do with any of those in those towns and just feel like let's just go catch up in person and talk about
Oh, of
shit and then
course.
leave. Yeah.
Well, it's actually funny. I was living in Jersey City the last few years. Now we just bought a house in Union Beach. Mike from One Cool Guy only lives like 20 minutes from me. I'm gonna hit him up and dude, let's grab a beer. Like let's catch up.
Yeah.
We used to spend almost every weekend together as kids. Let's
Oh
catch
wow.
up. It's been way too long.
Yeah. That's awesome. And then even though like I don't it's like I love hearing about that stuff, but there's been stories of where people are saying, yeah, I met up with this person to this. I'm going, holy shit! Like they're like, yeah, we reconnected after listening to the episode, and I reached out to this person, and now we're doing this stuff. And I'm going, that's fucking. It just blows my mind that
Oh
like
yeah. Well,
that's
listen
creating
again.
that.
Not to kiss your ass, but you and Joe Polito keep doing everything you're doing because you guys have definitely, dude. What we had back then was special. So it's nice to keep that going. It's the way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, Chris, I think I give Joe way more credit just for the amount of time he spent.
He really is. He really is doing
Fuck
God's work. I know
that
everyone said it on the
shit.
show, but
Yeah.
he really does do God's work. That
Oh
guy.
God, I with a kid, like fuck that
Yeah,
shit.
Joe's the best, man. I
Oh
love Joe.
yeah, he
But
is
yeah, it's
solid,
it's the
dude.
fact that he loves music. He listens to that stuff and it takes him back to that time.
I think he's just selfish. It's just selfishly bringing back to a time. We know
Yeah,
you're just
it's
selfish,
crazy.
Joe.
Yeah. Way to go, Joe.
Way to go, you selfish prick. No, I'm just kidding.
No, you know what it is? It's. I was gonna say, I know this sounds corny too. I always try to break everything down in my head. It's we really did have something special. And listening to all this, all the memories and everything comes running back to us. But it's like how you say, like if you think about something or you ever think of something this or think about that, I always hear a sound in my head. Every morning to this day, I'm 40 years
Yes.
old. I hear a sound in my head. And it's the best way to describe it. It's that Tom from Big Wig Yell, that yeah. Every day when I'm feeling shitty, I fucking hear that in my head and I'm fine. And I know that sounds weird, but it's like that's me reminiscing to that time.
That's awesome. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, well, it's kind of fucking crazy too. I might
Wow.
have to go see a doctor because of that, but it's like
I don't know.
hearing voices. But I'm telling you, man, it's like it takes me back to that time, and I hear that like if it's just crazy, man.
Yeah, it's kind of like in Inception where they have those things that bring it back to reality. What do they call them?
Yeah.
The whatever the fuck that shit is. That like it brings it back to the normalcy of something. So it's like almost like holding on to one of those in the sense.
Yeah, but I don't know, man. I know when I'm in a shitty mood, I just hear that.
When
Yeah,
when
it's
I'm
like,
in a
oh,
shitty
cool, let's
mood, I just
go.
think of Tom Petty
Yeah, it's
yelling in
stuck
my
in my
head.
head, but it's from hearing that the first time and it like blowing my mind. It's like, again, how many years later I'm a grown ass man and like I hear Tom in my head.
I think if anything, if someone would be like, I just hear Tom going, "You fuck you, you fucked
Yeah.
my car."
Yeah, so at least I'm getting the good part.
Actually, do we say real quick how the band finally disbanded?
No, you know what? I mean, I just think at that point, I know Sean had a family and everyone kind of started going their own ways. I think it just kind of ran its course, I guess. I mean, I guess the best way to really say it, and I'm sure we all did stupid shit back then to get on each other's nerves and so on and so on. But like after the Youth Ahead, we started another band called Matchmaker, and that was just all we did was like first show ever was like in Florida. We just let's skip everything and just play and record, and that's all we did, and that was great, and we had a great time doing it. But it was like at that point, it was like I think I think we might just be done playing. Matchmaker was still it was me. It was pretty much the Youth Ahead without Sean. So it was all the Youth Ahead, and we got my buddy Will, which is still, I mean, my best friend. Will came in and took over for guitar. So
Yeah, it's hard when you change the name and you.
yeah,
It's like when any band I've ever seen, I've yet to see that could pick up where the other one left off. It's like when Braid did when they broke up and like Chris left the band and they did that other band after that.
yeah,
It's like
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it was never supposed to be like the same, but it is one of those like you always do kind of compare the two,
Well, but you're kind of expecting to just kind of have had to go from where you are at that point to then go all the way back to square one. That's pretty like
Yeah,
okay.
can kick you in the nuts a little.
Yeah, you're going, oh wait, why isn't anyone else giving a fuck about this?
Yeah.
They're like, we're not playing this song I want. Like, all right.
I mean, again, we were still lucky enough to, a lot of our friends helped us out, and that's what it was all about back then. Like going back to like mentioning Cheesequake Firehouse when we did shows there. Like we ended up playing Midtown's first show at the Palace, and I remember like we were passing out flyers to a Firehouse show, and Gabe was like, "Yo, dude, can we play?" And it'd be our second show, and we're like, "Yeah, fuck it!" Like, and they just went. I think it was like Catch 22 played, so I think it was like Midtown just came and played like a few songs. But the point of that is everyone helped everyone. Yeah, come out and play a few shows. Like, sure, why not?
All right, man. Well, I am going to wrap this up.
Yeah, I feel like we could talk for hours,
I
man.
know.
So,
I told you, man. You don't be it's like there was probably not one point where you're probably nervous. You're like, I just forgot about that.
no, I'm gonna call you Billy and Rick. Yo, dude, there's another story. So,
Oh yeah, I've had people do that before. Like, I forgot about this. I'm like, yeah, I don't have another 2 hours to do this.
well, yeah, but see, in my head, and I'm sure like and other people too. It's like I'm sure one kid's listening to it, going, "No, he got it all wrong. That son of a bitch."
Well,
So
that's
it's
why I
like,
tell people. I'm like, that's why I started the blog, is so people can submit stories and say, like, do you want to recap this interview or just give your perspective? So it's like, email me the story and say, like, well, what I remember is this. Like,
yeah,
great, I'll take that and I'll post it up there.
yeah, I'm sure I have it all wrong, but that's what I remember. So,
Whatever, dude. I've gone back so many times. Actually, even in this interview, I remembered I referenced. Oh no! Before this, I was doing some research, and I think a couple of interviews ago, I said that Eben was in the Strider, but he wasn't in the Strider; he was in Yearly. And
oh,
because
gotcha,
I was
gotcha.
on the NGPP archives, I was like, God damn it! I'm like, I fucked that up. But there's been so many. Oh,
Stupid.
dude, Barker hits me up all the time. He's like, dude, you fucking got this wrong. I'm like, you know what, dude, fuck you.
Well, I've done that, like driving in my car. If someone says something, I'm like, wait, no, that wasn't the
Oh.
show.
Oh, I do.
Fuck it,
I'm
no.
yelling it. I'm yelling it the whole time. I'm like, they don't hear me, but I'm like, you're wrong, you idiot.
Damn it.
All right, so before we go, two more things. Two questions left. And so, what would you like to plug?
I got nothing.
Well,
That sounds
wait.
that
So,
sounds terrible.
well, no, you got Panic State Records. Tell me
I
about that.
do. Yes, and that's all. Yes, I do. I don't know why I forgot to plug Panic State, but yeah, me and Chris and Bean from Chris is in Catch 22, and Bean is his brother. Me, again, it's to be able to do a record company with some of your best friends is unbelievable. And again, now I feel like a jerk that I didn't mention Panic State this whole time.
Don't worry. I knew it was. I had it on my computer in front of me this entire time. I was gonna let you do it. Let you not
So
do it.
yes, we panicstaterecords.com. We put out a ton of cool records. A lot of our friends' bands. We put out like a Wilhelm Scream.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Wilhelm, which record did you put out by them?
Man, I'm so. But what's the album when they're wearing the horse mask? We did a reissue.
I don't know. You put the fucking record out, dude.
Yeah, I'm terrible, man. I can't remember.
Actually,
shit.
let me look it up right now. Like that seems to be the way that record companies are doing shit. They're reissuing.
Well, that we
records.
reissued. Yeah, we did. Like I said, we were lucky enough to put out. We put out like a patent pending record. That was before I was working with Bean and those guys. Like when I was with the label, we put out the first record I pretty much put out was the band. They're not a band anymore, but they were called the Moms. We put out a Mom 7-inch that actually got repressed by Paper and Plastic, which was really cool. We did a few of the bands. Oh, We Were Sharks that just got signed to Victory.
Dude, I remember hearing them years ago on Facebook, and I was like, this band's fucking awesome.
Yeah. Oh, dude. When we heard it, we said the same thing. The record did well. They're not, a lot of, with Panic State, we picked that one record, we put it out. Bands kind of, move on.
Mm-hmm.
One release we put out, I'm super stoked on, is Electric Century, which is Mikey Way from Mike Chem and David Debiak from Sleep Station.
Oh,
and
wow.
we ended up actually putting out 2 records for Sleep Station. For Electric Century.
Oh, shit. That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, dude, I'll tell you what. I'm going to get your address and I'll send you a bunch of records.
Yeah, please. That's awesome, and that's very generous for you to do that.
Yeah,
I would love to get that.
We put out a ton. We put out a ton of cool records. So yes. Hey Jay, you want to plug something? I do, Doyle. PanicStateRecords.com.
I'll just cut all of that out and just be that's all it. Actually, real quick, I don't have to leave this in, but there is something trying to load. It's the under the shows. There's something that's like trying to load that. It's not loading on your website.
Well, under the on Panic State.
So if I go to like a band's page under shows, there's these 3 boxes that are loading, but nothing shows up. So I don't know if you guys want to fix that.
We will.
Yeah, it's on every band's page, wherever that show box is. I have had my browser window open since like yesterday, so it could be.
Yeah, but we are also one of those labels that like we go in spurts. We're like, all right, we're gung ho on the label, and then life takes over. And that's always been Panic State. That's just the way we do it.
Yeah, the shows thing definitely. I just tried it into the incognito window and it's not loading, so you want to check that out, just to let you know.
Will do.
All right, man, before we wrap this up, last question, it's going to be, but I'm going to say ask it anyway. What scene ethics? It's like, what are your favorite songs? And you're like, fuck, what? What scene ethics do you still hold on to this day?
But it's funny. Every time on the podcast I hear that, I always think of the what is it? Is that Billy Madison? I'll take business ethics for 100. That always just comes to mind every time I hear that. I don't know why. You know what? Not to. I know a lot of people mention the whole DIY thing, but just really doing it yourself is just probably the way to do it. I mean, it's at the end of the day having your hands on that, and I try to do that. Listen, now that I'm older, I'm definitely a little, pretty lazy. When I was younger, it was like, oh, we got to do everything ourselves and so on and so on. But listening to that podcast and remembering that we used to do all this ourselves is insane. Like Ricky was saying with the flyers, and you know how many times I was at Kinko's at like 2 a.m. or whatever it was, like getting copies. Like we did that, and we did it ourselves. And I would say that's one thing I still try to be hands on with everything at that point.